Hello and welcome to episode 133 of the Midweek Bible Study. Hope you're doing good. Hope everything is going well. I'm Seth Parnell, minister at the Portia Church of Christ, and so glad you're here. Whether you're watching with us right now or whether you're watching later on, we appreciate you being here, and we hope we're doing all right. Hope you survived the little snow that we got in our local area just recently. In Jonesboro, we got some snow, but none of it stuck because it's a little too warm. But I know north of us, they got a lot of snow, and so if you got snow in your area, hope you navigated it well, and we appreciate you being here. It is wintertime, those things happen, and somebody told me today that we're going to get some more snow later on, possibly, and so we may have even more winter weather coming up. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, in the future? And so, hope you're doing well. Hope everything is going good for you. I hope you know that you're always invited at the Portia Church of Christ. We love to see new people. We love to have you visit us. Sometime. We're located at 307 South Jackson Street in Portia, Arkansas. Right now, we are meeting at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, and 5 o'clock on Sunday night, and 6 o'clock on Wednesday night. And so if you're around any of those times, and we've got a class on Sunday morning, on Wednesday night as well. And so hope you can join us then. Like I said, we would love to have you, love to see you, and get to know you a little bit. It's always good to see other brothers and sisters in Christ. And as I said, we're going over a class on the book of Matthew on Wednesday. We're going over a class on some lesser-known prophets on Sunday morning. And so it's always a good study. And so hopefully, if you're in the area, you can join us for some of that. We are also, if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to contribute, please feel free to put that down. Either put it in the comments or send it our way. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what you think. And like I said, we appreciate you just being here. We appreciate you just being here. But if you would like to participate in the study, you're more than welcome to put down your own thoughts and put down what you think about our story tonight. It's it should be a good lesson tonight. Next week, if you look forward to next week, we're going to have Aaron Dodson from the Washington Avenue Church of Christ. He's going to be with us next week, and we're going to go over some Bible translations and look at some of the things about the different Bible translations that are out there. There's many different translations of the Bible, and so we're going to take a look at some issues regarding that and see how we should approach those different variations that the translations have. And so hope you can join us here for next week as well. But tonight we are going to take a look at Genesis chapter 6. We're going to take a look at the building of the ark. And for people who go to Portia, this will be kind of a preview of a kind of a sneak peek of what's to come Sunday. Not an exact copy, but it's going to be similar to what we're going to go over this Sunday morning. But we're going to take a look at Genesis at chapter 6, and one of the more dynamic stories that we read about in the Old Testament. And there's some stories that sometimes seem a little bit more closer to a little more grounded, a little bit more closer to the normal way of doing things. We read stories of such as leaders who are rising up, and Moses taking his people out of the land of Egypt and leading them to the promised land. We read of battles being fought and won. We read about Joshua fighting the battle of Jericho, and he was able to become victorious in that regard. But this is a story that it's kind of in the similar vein of, I think, the story of Jonah. What's Jonah famous for? He got swallowed by a big sea creature, and got spat back out 3 days later. That's something that's sometimes hard to grasp onto, because that's something that doesn't work unless the power of God is in full force and in display. And this is going to be one of those stories where in any situation this wouldn't work unless the power of God was involved. and he certainly was in this case. And so this is a dynamic, story of how a man, was really the last one standing, and God, gave him something to do, and through his obedience, he was able to save not only, mankind itself. He saved his family, and he even saved, the animals, the creation that God had put on the earth. You remember when Genesis chapter 1, when God created this earth, he created all the animals and the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, and he said it was good. He called it good. Noah, he's going to preserve that. He's going to play a role in preserving everything that God had called good in this sense in the story. And we're not going to go, and Noah's really a big story. There's a lot to go over. We're not going to go every detail of it, because we would be here for a pretty long while, because there's many different ways you can take a look at the book of story of Noah. I almost said the book of Noah. It's not a book, but at the story of Noah. But we're going to take a look at a few things, but to kind of get a context of why this is happening, we'll have to look at the beginning here of Genesis chapter 6. And it's good to have the Dunlaps here. It's good to have you guys here. Hope everything's going well on your end. It's always good to have you guys stopping by. And we got Beth Chapman Foster here as well. Hope you are doing good. Hope everything is going your way as well. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. But in Genesis chapter 6, it says we get kind of the build up to why Noah had to build this ark in the first place. And specifically down here in verse 5, it says, "The Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thought of the heart was evil only continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart." This is the kind of the key. This is kind of the motivating factor behind why this flood was going to take place. God looked down upon mankind, and he saw that their wickedness was great, and it wasn't just one person practicing sin. It wasn't just a group of people practicing sin. This was something that was widespread and deeply entrenched in society. And it's a little bit amazing. It's a little bit almost depressing when you look at the creation of mankind in Genesis chapter 1, and then you don't get very far. You get all the way to Genesis chapter 6, and what has happened? Mankind has completely given themselves over to sin and to evil. He says that the wickedness of man was great, and he says that every intention and every thought was only evil continually. It means that they dwelled upon sin. They didn't just commit a sin here and there. They didn't just make a mistake here and there, but they dwelled upon it, and they had pleasure in it. They encouraged others to take part in it. Almost everything they did was in part of this. And it says that God, he regretted that he made man on the earth, because all of this wickedness, it grieved him that what he called good was now acting in such a way. And as we know, this is not something that was a surprise to God. We know that he's someone who knew when Adam and Eve made that choice in the Garden of Eden and were kicked out. He knew this was something that was going to happen, but yet it still hurt. It still hurt in this case. And so he saw that the wickedness was great, and that people dwelled upon sin, and that there was almost no hope of bringing it back. And so the solution that he proposes here is in verse 7, where he says, "So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heaven, for I am sorry that I have made them." God was going to bring about a great flood, a flood that had not been ever seen in the history of mankind. This would be a worldwide event that would encompass the entirety of mankind. A flood of monumental proportions that would affect, every single living thing, that was on the earth, at the time. And this was motivated by the wickedness, that mankind had, and which is, something for us, to keep in mind when we think of, as people. When I think of our own actions, of our own behavior, does God care about, the wickedness of one person? Does He care about, the things, that you do, or the things that, that I do? Does He care about, those things? Does it hurt God, when we, you know do those things, when we willingly embrace sin in the way that we sometimes do? I think it's something, that, God is not someone who has, emotional reactions, like we do, but I think it is something, that hurts when He sees His children, doing things that are against Him, that push away from Him. And so it's something that we should, keep in mind, because a lot of times we focus on the effect that sin has on us, that on us as the person, but we never consider maybe how God feels about that, how God feels about His children. Because some people have the perception of God that He's this emotionless being, that deals in absolutes. You're either saved or not saved. You're a part of the family or not, and there's no joy or no anger or nothing else involved. But that's not how the Scripture portrays God. But rather, many times it says that God was glad. God was angry. God was many different things. And so we need to be cognizant of how the effect that sin has on people other, than us. And it definitely has an effect on us, but we have to consider what it does for other people as well. But there's a bit of hope in the story, because it said, verse 8, it says, "But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." So even though the situation was dire, even though it was pretty bad, Noah was someone who found favor in the eyes of the Lord. There was hope. There was a person who did not give himself over to those things, but yet he served God, and he trusted in God, and he found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And if you look at in verse 9 here, you're just down below, it says that it describes him as a righteous man, as a blameless man. You think of, the story of Job. Job it's one of the words that's used to describe Job, someone who was a blameless man, someone who was blameless in his conduct. Blameless doesn't mean you're perfect. We know that Noah wasn't perfect, that Job wasn't perfect, but it means that the way that they operated themselves, no one could bring a charge against them. No one could accuse them of being a hypocrite, as you might read about with the Pharisees and the Sadducees in the Gospels. That wasn't Job, that wasn't Noah. They weren't hypocrites, but they're someone who served God, and they were genuine in it. And of course, Noah had his family. He had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and he had his wife and their wives as well. And they were going to be the ones that are going to survive this calamity. And it kind of circles back. If you go down to like verses 11 and 12, it kind of reiterates the state of the world. And it says, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted the way of the earth. And so, like I said, the picture of the world at this time is not good. It's something that he says that they were violent. They took advantage of people, and there was no respect for human life, but rather they said that they were corrupted in all their ways. And so this was the tipping point. And so because of this, God was not going to someone who was going to be, he wasn't going to doom Noah, who was righteous in this flood that was coming, but rather he's going to give Noah a job to do. a very big job, but a job, nonetheless. And if you look at here in verse 14, he says, to make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are made to make it. The length 300 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. And then he goes on to put some details on it. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. And so he was told to build a big, ark. And you think about what an ark is. Sometimes when you see, like artist depictions of the ark, when you see, maybe pictures that are painted, it sometimes looks like a boat, but really the ark was more like a barge. It was more like a big box that floated. And so it wasn't something that was very elegant, but it wasn't meant to sail anywhere or to be a big seafaring vessel. But this was basically a floating box, but it was going to accomplish the purpose that it was built to accomplish. And so he says, to make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Some translations translate gopher wood as cypress wood. We're not entirely sure what gopher wood is, but some believe it was cypress wood, and that was the type of wood that was used to construct the ark. And he says to make this and to make it 300 cubits in its length, its breadth 500 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. And so if you wonder what a cubit was, it was about, I think it was about 20, that may be too big. It's like 20 inches, I believe. At least a cubit, if you see here, a cubit was the length between the end of the king's finger and to the tip of the elbow. And so it was the forearm area to the hand was the original size of the cubit. And as you can imagine, people are built different ways. They have different their bodies are different, and so the measurement of a cubit wasn't exactly the same all throughout history. There's what we call a large cubit, there's a small cubit, and so they kind of vary in their exact length. But we know that this was a big, it was a big ark, it was a big boat, and some people compare it to that of the Titanic. The Titanic was a gigantic boat, and it was almost similar to the size of that. But it was 300 cubits long. It was 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high, and so this was pretty substantial building operation. And to think that Noah was someone who did this without any modern tools, without any modern processes or modern support systems, but him and his family basically did this by themselves. I'm sure, of course, God gave them the instruction. He probably helped them along the way, I'm sure. But think about what a big job that is. Think about what a tremendous activity that would be. You can imagine, when God first told Noah this, he might have been like, really? That's what you want me to do? Do you know how much that's going to cost? Do you know how much time that's going to take? Do you know what other people are going to think? There's a lot of objections that Noah could have made, to building this ark like God told him to. And a lot of them to us might seem to be, pretty valid. All those that we mentioned. He, like Moses, he could have thought of a lot of different excuses as to why he shouldn't do this, because like I said, doing this without, especially even with modern technology and modern tools, constructing something of this size would still take time. It would still take a pretty substantial amount of investment. But back then, with what he had to work with, it would be compounded. It would be even more. And so this would be a big project, and it would probably take everything that Noah owned in order to make this happen. He had probably had to pour everything he had into this, project. And so you can imagine, what he might have initially thought when God told him to do this. Do you know what you're asking of me? God, he did know what he was asking of Noah, and Noah maybe didn't really sink in at the moment, but he knew that God was saving his life, and he was looking out for him. Do we ever have that kind of reaction ourselves? Do we ever react that way to maybe to some of the things that we read in the Bible? God, are you really asking that of me? Do you really expect me to do that? Do you really, expect me to go in that direction? Do you know that that's what that's going to cost me? Do you know what obstacles stand in my way? Do we ever ask those questions of God? They're good questions to ask, but I think it's important to note that when God tells us something to do, when He instructs us on something to follow, on either something to do or a pattern to follow, it's for our own benefit. It's to save our life. It's to give us a good life, even though it may cost something of us, even though it may require a lot of our time, a lot of our energy, a lot of our investment, but yet, to save our life, a lot of times, we would give, anything. And that's what God is offering, to us. He's saying, I want to give you life, but you're going to have to get out there and you're going to have to, do, what I tell you. And so in the end, it's up to us. And that's an important thing, to remember, because, like you said, like Noah and like Moses, you can always think of an excuse as to why you don't do something that is found in the scriptures. Well, that was back then, or you don't understand, my situation. You don't understand what I am faced with, and people are in different situations. You don't want to judge everybody with a uniform standard. We know that people have different things to deal with. But that God sometimes, in order to be a faithful child of God, it does cost us something. It does cost, things that like Noah had to deal with, and cost, the things that he had to deal with. Imagine what the people thought, when Noah was building, this gigantic ark. They probably thought that they probably did think that he was crazy, that he was insane, for doing this, that he had lost his marbles, as he might say. Sometimes people might think that of us when they see, some of the things that either we refuse to do or that we pour our time, into. Some people, think that, singing, just, singing from the heart is something that is, a waste of time, or something that is an outdated, thing to do. But it's something that we're called to do, and so it's something that we should be invested in. You can take a look at the Lord's Supper, or any other examples that you could follow about, things that people on the outside don't always understand, and don't always, understand why we do them. And we should always try to do our best to communicate, why we do what we do, but that should never be a deterrent for following, the Word of God, because as we know, this is something that will indeed, in the end, save our life. It's good to have Cheryl Herring here. Thank you. You said you always enjoy the lessons. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for that. But Noah was, like I said, Noah was someone who he had a lot to deal with, and we certainly wouldn't want to envy being in Noah's position, because this was a this was a something that took a lot for him to do. I would like to know, the conversation that Noah had, with his wife, after God told him this. I wonder how that conversation went. Noah telling his wife, "I'm going to have to start building a boat, and a big boat, and this is going to take maybe over 100 years to build, but I'm going to start building this boat." I wonder how his wife took that news. But it was definitely a lot that was asked of him. But it's something that that he did. I mean, no, Noah is included in the Hall of Fame. If you go look at Hebrews chapter 11, Noah is included in that. And so it's something that God was pleased with him. And in the end, we know that everything that God said would happen, did happen. The rains came, and that had never come before. The fountains of the deep were opened, and the earth was flooded for over 40 days. Water was on the face of the earth, and they had to kind of float along until he sent out that dove, and the dove came back. It came back, and then finally it didn't come back because it found a place to land, and so they knew that the water had receded. And so it's interesting to note that what like I said, what God gives us is always for our best interest. It's always something to save our life. But also everything that God says is going to happen, it will happen. It happens. The promises of God are something that always come true. Whether it's a promise of punishment and destruction, or it's a promise of life and a promise of good things to come. If God says something is going to happen, it always does. And that's something that we should keep in mind when we go about, navigating our way through this crazy world, because it can throw a lot at us. This world can put a lot, in our way, throw a lot, at our feet. It can be hard to walk through sometimes with everything that it throws at us. But we know that when God says there's going to be, life everlasting, that we're going to have living water, that we're going to, rejoice in what He gives us, we can have full confidence that that is indeed, the case. Noah could have said, "Well, God, are you sure that's going to happen? Are you sure that this water is going to come? I mean, if this doesn't come, this will be a waste of time. Maybe I should just hold off on this for a little bit." By all indications that we read, Noah, he got to work right away. He didn't wait around. He didn't question whether God was serious or not, but he got to work right away. And that should be our attitude as well. Don't it's not really our place to doubt the promises of God. It's just our responsibility to determine what we're going to do about it. Are we going to be someone that's prepared for that day of judgment? Are we going to be someone that has put it off for another day? Someone who has decided that the things of this world are more important than what comes after, than life everlasting. We have a big decision to make. As people who live on this earth, people who are accountable for their actions, we have a tremendous decision to make. To follow God or to not. It's pretty simple when you put it down to those terms, but it's something that can have a tremendous impact. Noah had a choice. He could build a boat or he could not build the boat. And as we see there, if he had not done this, he would have perished with his family. But because he decided to build that boat, he and his family was saved. If we're someone who obeys the gospel and is baptized for the remission of our sins, we're going to be saved. God has promised that. But if we're someone who decides not to do that and rejects that, then we know that we're going to be separated from those promises. We're going to be absent from that salvation that He has provided. And so we have to decide what we're going to do. And that is a big part of the story of Noah. But I think we're about 32 minutes in, so we better start winding it down. But we'll have a like I said, probably have a longer episode. We always have longer episodes when we have a guest on, but we'll have a longer one next week. And we got a lot of exciting things to come up. I know we've got Sean Duree is going to be coming up next month. And we'll have Travis Katermis, who was rescheduled from last week. He was supposed to be on last week, but unfortunately he got sick. and so he wasn't able to make it. But he'll be rescheduled in the next week, and so a lot of smart people coming up, and so I know you'll enjoy hearing what they have to say. But until then, we appreciate you being here and supporting us, and hope this is something that has been beneficial to you, and hope it's something that's kind of brightened your night. But we'll be back here next Thursday for a 7 o'clock for another episode of the Midweek Bible Study. It'll be episode 134 next time. So hopefully you can join us then. But until then, hope you go out and glorify God in everything that you do. See you next time.